Welcome back to Ethical Point, everyone. I am super excited to be here today because we're tackling one of the most relatable and honestly heavily tested topics in public administration.
Absolutely. So today's explainer is all about a classic 2023 UPSC General Studies Paper 4 case study. We're looking at a joint secretary caught in the ultimate work-life tug-of-war. We call it the Rashika dilemma. And look, for anyone prepping to step into the civil services, getting the ethics behind this scenario isn't just about scoring marks. It's really about surviving and thriving in your future career.
To make this actionable, here is our roadmap for today. First, the Rashika dilemma. Second, mapping the stakeholders. Third, defining the ethical conflict. Fourth, legal protections for women. Fifth, the way forward. And finally, your UPSC answer writing strategy. Okay, Section 1, the Rashika dilemma. Let's dive right into this and lay out the real-world scenario. So, the central question of this explainer is one that honestly makes me a bit skeptical. Where do we actually draw the line in public service? I mean, we always hear about duty, right? Sacrifice. But does a civil servant truly have the right to refuse emergency weekend work? Can you realistically tell your boss, no, I have to be with my kids when you're managing a massive government portfolio? Yeah, it's a really tough question. So let's ground the theory in reality for a second. Picture this. It's Saturday, 9 p.m. Rashika, a joint secretary who has worked incredibly hard for this posting, is still at the office. Her husband, Vikram, an MNC executive, is out of town. Her 5- and 3-year-old kids are at home with a nanny. And just as she's hoping to finally wrap up, her boss, Mr. Suresh, calls at 9:30 p.m. demanding a detailed note for a Sunday meeting. The immediate pressure she's facing right now is immense. She wants to serve the public, but she realizes she's kind of failing her family in this moment. Right, which brings us to Section 2, mapping the stakeholders. Identifying these competing interests is step 1 in literally any ethics analysis. Just look at this trap Rashika is in. It's this massive web of competing duties. Right, it's totally split in two. Over on the left, you've got her internal family duties, her husband Vikram, her young kids who clearly need parental care, and the domestic helper who only has limited authority. But then on the right, you have these massive external demands. You've got the ministry, the citizens expecting good governance, her colleagues, and of course, Mr. Suresh expecting the workload to be managed no matter what. She is literally the pivot point for all of these expectations. Section 3, defining the ethical conflict. When I first read this case study, my initial thought was, isn't this just a standard time management issue? Does it really require a whole ethical deep dive?
Oh, it absolutely does. It's so tempting to just brush this off as a bad weekend at the office, but we have to elevate this discussion to the level of systemic institutional ethics.
To really get this, let's pause for some conceptual clarity. You absolutely must use this term in your exam introductions, the double burden. In layman's terms, the double burden is this intense tension faced by high-achieving professional women. Basically, they're expected to show total institutional dedication at work while simultaneously carrying the primary weight of domestic and childcare duties at home. It's essentially working 2 full-time jobs, and it directly threatens their fundamental right to a personal life. Which leads us directly to our second critical term, the ideal worker myth. Now, this is the totally flawed assumption that true dedication to duty implies infinite availability. The myth says a quote-unquote good worker has 0 outside responsibilities and can just work 24/7. So the crucial takeaway here is that if a system only rewards people who can sacrifice their family life, it becomes structurally biased against parents and especially mothers. A system that just burns out its officers isn't showing dedication, right? It's just lacking compassionate administration. Wow. Okay, that totally reframes the situation for me, and I guess it leads perfectly into the gender division of labor. I can really see the systemic bias here now. Because think about it, even though Rashika's husband Vikram is a high-level MNC executive, the childcare logistics default completely to her. They are in a dual-career professional household, yet the emotional and logistical burden falls disproportionately on her shoulders, simply because she's the mother. But let me play the skeptic again for just a second. When you join the civil services, isn't selfless service the ultimate foundational value? Like, shouldn't Rashika just put her head down, grab some coffee, and do the Sunday report for the greater good of the public?
It's a super valid question, but we really have to contrast selfless service with self-care.
Yes, selfless service is a core value, absolutely. But self-care is vital because a public servant cannot serve the public effectively if their mental health is deteriorating. Long-term organizational efficiency completely depends on employee well-being. If Rashika crashes, the public loses a highly capable joint secretary. So choosing self-care isn't being selfish at all. It's literally a professional prerequisite for sustainable public service. And hey, it's not just an abstract moral argument either. Let's look at Section 4, Legal Protections for Women, because ethics in public administration must always be backed by constitutional provisions. I want every single student watching this to memorize these 4 laws. If you want to demonstrate concrete governance knowledge in your mains answer, you need them. First up, the POSH Act of 2013. This mandates internal complaints committees to ensure safe, dignified environments. Second, look at the Maternity Benefit Act, specifically the 2017 amendment, that gives 26 weeks of paid leave and mandates creche facilities for larger offices. Third is the Code on Wages from 2019, strictly prohibiting gender-based wage discrimination. And finally, the Factories Act of 1948, which regulates hours and mandates safe transport for late shifts. Citing these shows the examiner you understand that a healthy, equitable work environment isn't a favor from the boss, it's a legal mandate. All right, so we understand the problem and the legal backing. Section 5, the way forward. If I'm an aspiring officer sitting in the exam room sweating over this 20 marker, how do I actually solve this case study? I need a concrete plan. To solve this, you need a multi-tiered structure. Please, don't just throw random solutions at the paper. Format them chronologically from the micro to the macro. Step 1, individual level. Step 2, organizational level, and step 3, policy level. Let's break those down. Okay, so at the individual level, these are the immediate personal actions Rashika can take right now. First, assertive communication. She needs to have a candid conversation with Mr. Suresh and negotiate flexi work or work from home for that Sunday just to manage her boundaries. Second, strengthen her personal support system. She's got to synchronize calendars with her husband Vikram so that when he is actually in town, he takes primary charge of the kids, sharing the burden so she doesn't totally burn out. Exactly. Then we scale up to the organizational level, which is all about institutional fixes. The ministry desperately needs standard operating procedures, or SOPs, for non-emergency tasks. I mean, you can't just drop a meeting on a Saturday night. There should be realistic 48-hour windows. Next, leverage delegation. A joint secretary shouldn't be starting from scratch on a weekend. Subordinates should have the data like 80% ready by Friday. And finally, Mr. Suresh needs training in empathetic leadership. He has got to stop imposing unreasonable workloads that severely compromise employee welfare. And that brings us to the policy level, where you can show the examiner some real forward-thinking administrative vision. Let's introduce this concept, ROWE, or a results-only work environment. In simple terms, this means shifting the entire office culture away from being presence-based, like tracking who stays at their desk until 9 p.m., and making it purely output-based. If the work is excellent and gets done, the physical hours in the office shouldn't even matter. This naturally allows for flexible and hybrid work models, which is a massive step forward for gender-sensitive administrative practices. Section 6, UPSC Answer Writing Strategy. This is where we consolidate all this incredible theory and all these frameworks into a high-scoring exam strategy that you can take straight to your answer sheet. Right, let's do a super quick recap of the exact structural elements you need to write down. In your introduction, immediately deploy the term double burden to show you grasp the systemic issue. Next, draw a quick visual map of the internal versus external stakeholders. For the legal portion, confidently cite the POSH and Maternity Benefit Acts. And finally, structure your solutions using the individual, organizational, and policy framework we just discussed. This structure perfectly translates theory into actionable marks. I want to leave you with this powerful thought, which is the absolute perfect concluding sentence for your exam. A burnt-out joint secretary is a liability to the ministry. A balanced one is its greatest asset. Achieving an ethical balance isn't a weakness. It is the cornerstone of sustainable, compassionate public service. Man, what a phenomenal way to wrap this up. Thank you for walking us through that. And to everyone watching, keep analyzing the world around you through an ethical lens. We will see you in the next explainer.